So hi everybody, in this video we're going to talk about the GeoCollaborate platform that's being used by the SICE, the Sensitive Information Sharing Environment, operated by the All Hazards Consortium in partnership with Storm Center Communications. This tool answered the requirement for the private sector, which was how do we create a mechanism to share our information with government without uploading or giving them our data. The trust factor is just not there. So the Fleet Response Working Group folks were looking at different platforms, and we came across this platform as was referred to us through the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. And it was designed by NASA and NOAA. I guess NASA funded it. And then so today we're going to walk through some of the capabilities. On the phone with us is Dave Jones, CEO of Storm Center Communications. So this is the technology behind this tool is the most important thing, and it's hard to grasp. So Dave's really gotten the way to communicate it down pretty good. But it's a way of sharing data without giving access to data or without giving people the data. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you, and let's just kind of walk through this. I think this will be very important for people to understand how the technology works.
Sure, Tom. Thanks. Well, what you see on the screen is basically a question that a lot of people are asking: what is Geo Collaborate? And essentially, I've broken it down into three screens here. You have a leader, so if somebody has credentials to log on and take the lead of a Geo Collaborate instance, then they can display any data layers on it that they want. It could be real-time data layers. It could be critical infrastructure layers that are made available through web services from FEMA or DHS or internally at other state organizations or any organization, frankly. And then on the right-hand side is follower. Anybody who connects to the web and connects to the URL address that the leader is hosting will then follow in real time. And this is not screen sharing. This is actual geospatial data sharing. So when somebody connects to that URL, they will see a map, and they will start to receive data sets into their mapping environment that are produced in real time from the leader.
So Dave, let me clarify something that I didn't understand at first that maybe others hearing this for the first time may not. So a leader is someone who has a license, which you refer to as an instance of their own, right? So when I have a license, I become a leader, and I then control sharing the data or not sharing the data layer. And the follower is anyone with a browser who is given the URL. There's no login or password needed, which was another requirement of the private sector. They didn't want to have to remember username and passwords, right? And so an instance, right, is basically what you're calling a license, allows you to post and share that information to the followers. That's great. Go ahead.
That's right, Tom, and you do not need a license to be a follower, and there's no limit to the number of followers. So we've never hit a limit where it breaks. So that's good to know. And also, when you are a follower, you can receive the data sets from the leader in real time, and then once you turn Geo Collaborate off as a follower, you can still have those data sets on your system. But when you close the browser, all the data goes away.
Yeah.
So you have no real way of sharing that information from a follower out. You really are connected to the leader and what they want you to see. So the leader can turn those data sets on and off in real time.
So Dave, let me ask you a question about that. So if I'm a follower, I open up my web browser, it opens up the map, and whatever data you turn on shows up on my screen. What is showing up on my screen? It's really not the data set, right? Is it an image of the data?
Nope, it's the actual data, because you can query that information too. You can click on it, and I'll show you that in a real-time demo here in just a few minutes on how you can click on the data and inquire. But what happens with that information is it's pulled into the web browser cache. You can't save it, and you can't export it. So once the browser window is closed, all that information disappears. And when the leader turns the data off and no longer shares it, it's also gone from your browser.
Okay, so that answers the question in a sensitive information sharing. If it's in my cache, it's not on my hard drive, right? It's not. I don't have the data file, right? I just have the data
That's right.
in a cache. You turn it off on your end as a leader. I can't download it and save it. Okay, very good, very unique.
That's right. And one of the other unique things we did, Tom, is that in delivering the data to everybody's individual web browser, because it doesn't matter what web browser they're using. They could be using their phone, or they could be using an iPad, device. Is that we're using the power of everybody's local systems that they're using to visualize the data in their mapping environments. So that's also very unique.
Yeah.
And it works cross-platform. Okay. So the image that you see down the bottom is called a dashboard, and it's called a collaborative dashboard because the leader can determine what data layers they want to appear on the left-hand side of this dashboard. And a dashboard is the URL. You click on dashboard, and then you can keep this up 24/7, 365. Whenever the leader changes things like layers, then the dashboard will update every 30 minutes. And so there's also a key points window here. If the leader updates key points, that will update much faster than 30 minutes to keep people abreast of when the next update is coming or what data sets might be important, new data sets that are being shared, things like that. And then this is an example of being able to query against the data set. This was when Hurricane Michael was making landfall or approaching the panhandle of Florida. This data set was estimated wind damage that the National Weather Service was putting out. When you click on that red area, this window popped up that says threat level, potential for wind 74 to 110 miles per hour, and then list the potential impacts of that wind.
Yeah.
So it allows people to receive data sets and inquire by clicking on those data sets what they mean.
So, Dave, this is powered by Esri, right? What is, I noticed in the bottom right corner, how would you explain the difference between the Esri platform, which is certainly a powerful platform, it's used all over the place. What would you say is the difference between GeoCollaborate and Esri? A lot of people use Esri; they're very familiar with it. It looks the same. What's the difference in sharing data on Esri versus collaborating on GeoCollaborate?
Sure. So when Esri is a licensed GIS package, so they have Esri ArcGIS online. They have desktop versions of Esri, which is a pretty complex GIS program to use. You have to be pretty knowledgeable in GIS to use it. The great thing about Esri as well is that they export and can make available web services. So they can put out web mapping services, they can put out feature services. They're basically data services that GeoCollaborate consumes, right? So GeoCollaborate is not a complex GIS technology. It's a technology to focus on sharing out of trusted data sources across multiple platforms and multiple use cases and multiple users so they can see those products. They don't have to worry about whether they understand GIS or not.
I gotcha. Yeah, and I think from the SICE standpoint, this was really a decision support tool for speed, right? Getting authoritative data on one picture, on one screen. You could have multiple dashboards for different use cases, certainly. But I know that's why the Fleet Response Working Group and its SICE Working Group selected GeoCollaborate, just because of that, because of the speed. Because half the time they're on their cell phone, they're on their mobile device, right? Very different environment.
That's right.
So, okay.
And it's a very light application, so it works very quickly.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So the next slide I want to show here, Tom, is an example. We're taking Pennsylvania and how they might share information out to the private sector, to organizations that might want to see information that Pennsylvania might be staging in a business emergency operations center. So, for example, if Pennsylvania sends their data into the trusted data cloud, then anybody who turns GeoCollaborate on will also get that data in real time. And then as it updates, it will also update on these follower systems, these private sector companies that are getting it. And then, of course, if these other ones like Giant and Hershey and Garden Center, Tire Center, and Walmart, as soon as they turn GeoCollaborate on, then the data flows into them as well. And one thing that's important to understand with GeoCollaborate is, even if you join a collaborative session late, you will still receive all of the data that you missed when the collaboration session started. So all that data will load up so everybody can see what the leaders shared.
So in this example, Pennsylvania has the license and they're the leader of turning the data on or off, right? All the other folks are using their internet browsers, but they still have to click that button on their screen that says turn Geo Collaborate on for the data to be sucked in to their cache for them to see it, right?
That's right. They just have to turn it on, and then all of a sudden they'll see the information that Pennsylvania is sharing.
I got it. Okay. And now if they turn that off, what happens?
If they turn the switch off, they will maintain the data sets until they close the browser. But when they turn it off, they'll no longer be following Pennsylvania, so then they can move around the data however they'd like.
I got it.
Once they close the browser, then all the data's gone.
And so let's say they close the browser, they go home, 9 o'clock at night after dinner, you turn it back on. What happens then?
Then that data will load back up into their browser.
Okay, the latest updates will load it. Okay.
That's right. Whatever
Excellent.
Pennsylvania has loaded into their leader instance will be shared in real time out to anybody who connects to that URL.
So an example of this is how we at the All Hazards Consortium use this. We have a license. So the consortium and the Fleet Work Group would be Pennsylvania in this case, and we have hundreds of followers that monitor our power outage, not power outage, but our power expediting, power restoration dashboard, right? Which we call the Fleet Movement Dashboard. So no logins, people just pull it up and can leave it up, and as we update it, they get it update. And we use it as a way to get 20, 30 states and 100 companies all on the same page at the same time with regards to fleet movement use case, which is combining weather, transportation, declarations, waivers from a bunch of states and local counties and cities. It's a very effective method, but I think other people may have their own internal or external use cases where they need to have a whole bunch of people following the same data at the same time for coordination. So good example. This is real, right? Pennsylvania is actually doing this now through their EOC, correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
So the next slide that I have, Tom, that I want to show is how companies or organizations or federal agencies can share data into the trusted cloud environment, and then going into, let's say, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's instance. So if this company up here, CNS, knows of fuel closed locations in Maryland and Virginia, and they've highlighted it with red dots, they could share that information into the cloud. So could this property company, HPS LLC in Pennsylvania, they might highlight counties that need assistance during particular events. They could share that information into the cloud service. And then a utility might have transmission and distribution lines that they have updated or whatever that they want to add into the trusted cloud service. And then Pennsylvania could connect to each one of them individually and pull their data in right into Pennsylvania's instance. So that brings three disparate types of data together into one mapping environment, so you can get a collaborative common operating picture and a look at this information. And I can blow that up here just for an example. Here are the transmission distribution lines, and then you have the power out locations for fuel in Maryland and Northern Virginia, and then you have the counties that are highlighted that this property manager might need assistance with. So that's three separate data sets going into one collaborative common operating picture right into Geo Collaborate for Pennsylvania. And this can be duplicated and replicated everywhere, right? Any company that has any data can offer their data up.
So Dave, go back to that previous screen for just a second. Yeah, so in this example, everybody would have their own license. I think you have a footnote in the title, right? Requires individual license and a data sharing agreement. The data sharing agreement that CNS, for example, they will control who can use their data or see their data or not, right? So it's through the data sharing agreement, CNS decides who can see and who can't, right?
That's right.
Okay. And then in this case, obviously the utility, HPS LLC, and CNS have all agreed through the data agreement that PEMA, or Pennsylvania Emergency Management, is one of those the organizations who have the ability to look at the information. Fantastic. Okay. So CNS can turn that on at noon and turn that off at 12:30. They can, in other words, they have control.
Exactly. Yeah. Every person who's offering the data has total control through an on-off switch of how long that data is offered, and you can see on other instances. And I'll demonstrate that here in just a second.
Okay. Yeah, that's key, that the people that own the data have control of sharing or not, and they also have control of who can look at it. So it's not just on a public cloud. It's really not on a cloud. It's being shared through the trusted cloud service, which in our world is the SIS, right? The Sensitive Information Sharing Environment. But there may be other instances where you don't have a SIS and people can do this internally. But the people that own the data have total control over when it's shared and who can look at it. Outstanding. Okay, good.